Hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parsha Pinchas 5783. Finally learning the same Parsha completely as our brethren in Eretz Yisrael, and we just started the 3 weeks today. Today is the 17th of Tammuz, and despite the fact that we're not eating, it is still an important day to learn Torah, keeping in mind that this is the day of the Egel Zahav, the golden calf, which means that really Moshe was coming down with the two luchot today. Today should have been Kabbalat HaTorah. Today should have been the day that we received the luchot and began the process of learning Torah. If it weren't for our failings and our messing up with the Egel Zahav, with the golden calf, today would be the day that we'd be receiving the Torah, having a Yom Tov like that. So the Parsha in a nutshell, real quick. First of all, Pinchas is rewarded. Last week's Parsha ended on sort of a cliffhanger. Pinchas performs an act, kills Zimri and Cosby, and is this week he's rewarded with that. With this, exactly what he's rewarded with is going to be an important subject for our class. We'll spend probably most of the class discussing his reward. We haven't really ever done that in detail, and it's not as simple and it's not as clear cut as many commentators would have you believe. So we'll start with that, and then we'll continue with the rest of the Parsha, where there is a command the Jewish people have to fight against Midian, who had committed the atrocities that they had at the end of last week's Parsha. And the Jewish people are then counted for a number of reasons, one of which is because their sojourn in the Midbar is pretty much over at this point. And to sort of, as we've said before, this is sort of a bookend, so the book of Bamidbar, or the book of Numbers, the Jewish people are counted at the beginning of the book, at the end of the book. And this is that end of the book counting that we've spoken about. There's a command to give the Jewish people land in Eretz Yisrael according to these numbers. The Benot Tzlafchad is in this week's Parsha. We've spoken about that in previous years, where the daughters of Tzlafchad said, we don't have any brothers, our father died, we should inherit, right? So we should get some of the land, should we not? And then they brought this up to Moshe. Moshe brought this up to H-Shem, and due to their wisdom, the law that girls inherit if there are no sons, then it's learned through them. They get the honor, they get of being mentioned by name as the people from whom this very important law is learned. The Yehoshua is appointed as the next leader of the Jewish people. Moshe does a smicha on him. There's pours oil, all the other things, and we'll discuss this in some detail. And then the korbanot are given. This Parshat Pinchas is read very often, especially for whenever there's a musaf. So whenever there's Rosh Chodesh or the holidays, we read the korbanot, the offerings that were given on the holidays. And that's pretty much the Parsha in a nutshell. Let's see what we can learn in detail, in some depth today. Let's go to sharing the screen. All right, this is the source sheet that I shared with you previously by email. I hope you all got that. And it's available afterwards if you want to look through it. That is why I create this source sheet. It's not just to show off. It's just because we don't always get through all of the material, and I'd like you to be able to look at it in depth and review, so that we all know all the same things. So, like I said, as I promised, we're going to learn quite a bit about the reward that Pinchas received. It's not as clear-cut as it may seem. We'll see the Rashi at first, which is probably the most famous answer of what his reward is. But there are other answers as well. First, let's look at the Pesukim themselves. chapter 25, verses 10 through 13. It says, Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe, and he said, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Yeshiv et chamati me'al b'nei Yisrael, b'kino et kinati b'tocham, v'lo kiliti et b'nei Yisrael b'kinati. So Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen, he took away my wrath, my anger from the Bnei Yisrael, with the anger that I had with them, and that I did not destroy them from my anger, from my jealousy, however you want to translate kinati. Lachein, therefore, this is still Hashem speaking to Moshe, Emor, say, Hinini noten lo et briti shalom. So it sounds like he's telling Moshe to tell Pinchas, or to tell the Jewish people, there are different opinions, who he's supposed to speak to, but Moshe is supposed to say that Hashem is giving Pinchas his brit, his covenant of peace. It's not exactly clear what that means. The next verse supposedly explains it. V'haita lo uzaro achrav, so it should be for him and for his descendants after him, brit kuhunat olam, a brit, a covenant of kahuna, of service, of being a Kohen forever. Tachat asher kinei lelakav v'chaper al bnei Yisrael, because he took away the anger of Hashem and got forgiveness for the Jewish people. There are a lot of commentaries on a lot of parts of this. The Orach Chaim himself has pages and pages on just these verses. But I'd like to take your attention for a moment. I'd like to focus it on Rashi. So Rashi says, probably the most famous answer of what the reward for Pinchas was, is that she'af al pi shekvar nidna kahuna lezaro shel Aaron. Who is a Kohen? Who is a Kohen? So the Torah itself tells us, the Holy Torah tells us, that the kahuna was given to Aaron and his descendants. Which descendants? All of them? So Rashi is going to say, Lo nitna el Aaron ulvanav. The kahuna was only given to Aaron and his living sons at that time. Not to his sons' sons who were living at that time. Right? So Aaron had 4 sons, and of the 4 sons, the ones who had children, one of them was Elazar, and Elazar had a son by the name of Pinchas, but he's Aaron's grandson. So Aaron's grandsons were not included in the first wave of kahuna. Anybody who was born after that point would automatically be born a Kohen. And the Gur already explains why that is. It has to do with this idea of purity, that they're born pure, etc. Right? So Rashi is making it very clear. Lo nitna el Aaron uvanav she'nimshuchu imo, who were then alive. So lehem sheyolidu achar hamishchatan. So mishachatan. So those any children who were born after that point became a Kohen. Aval Pinchas shenoled kodem, but Pinchas, who was born before that point, lachein v'lo nimshach lo ba liklal kahuna adkan. He was not a Kohen until now. So this is his reward for what he did, is that he now becomes a Kohen. He was not a Kohen before. Now he's going to be a Kohen. Lachein sheninu b'zvachim, as this is clear in Zvachim. And the line in Zvachim, the Gemara in Zvachim, page 101 says, Lo nit kahen Pinchas ad shehargo lezimri. Pinchas was not made a Kohen until he killed Zimri. Right? And of course, it's worth mentioning, as is very clear, that he created a sense of shalom in that he was able to stop the plague that was enveloping the Jewish people at the time. The Jewish people were suffering, and this killing Great. This killing of Zimri stopped the plague and was able to give kapara for the Jewish people. And that was a sense of shalom, that was a sense of peace between Hashem and the Jewish people. And that's why he's rewarded like this, that he's a Kohen, and a Kohen's main function is to create peace amongst people, between Hashem and the Jewish people, etc. So he is now fulfilling that role. So great, that's his reward. He is now a Kohen. Boom. And that's basically how that's learned by most people most of the time, the way the Rashi learns it. And now we're going to see, though, that there are at least 4 other ways to see what his actual reward is. And that these different opinions aren't just brand new, ideas that come out of nowhere. Some of these ideas are as old as almost Rashi. What do I mean by almost Rashi? Datzikanim were written by the Balei Tosfot, which were made up of Rashi's sons, grandsons, etc. That next generation, basically, after Rashi, are the people who wrote the Datzikanim and the Tosfot. So they say, so his reward of being a Kohen is not just to being a Kohen specifically, but specifically to be a Kohen of this Mashiach Milchama, the Kohen who went out to war. Now, there are 2 Kohanim Gedolim in every generation. When there were Kohanim Gedolim, there was a Kohen Gadol who served in the temple. There was another Kohen Gadol who would go out to war and give encouragement and a holy purpose to the wars that the Jewish people had to fight. So let's see where. Mekan Amru Chazal Delo Nidkain Pinchas Ache Hargu Zimri. And regarding that, says the Balei Tosfot, is what it says. Remember, Rashi's proof was that this Gemara that Pinchas did not become a Kohen until he killed Zimri. What it means is the Hachi Nicha Mash Olam Makshim Heich Harag Pinchas et Zimri. The whole world was saying, how could Pinchas do such a thing as kill Zimri? V'nidma, he became Tamei Lamed. That's when somebody is involved with death. They become Tamei, and a Kohen is not allowed to become Tamei. So how could his killing Zimri make him a Kohen? It doesn't make sense. So that's why he was not made a Kohen yet at that point. Says the Datzikanim, is that he, although he killed somebody, he became, sorry, I'm mixing this up. He was made a Kohen. Distractions here, just a moment. That's the problem with technology. Things keep popping up. Just a moment. Let me see what I'm saying. So he's saying that this specific job of a Kohen Milchama is what Pinchas and his descendants would be able to be, due to the fact that he was involved in war to begin with. He was involved in death, and therefore his involvement in war makes sense. So he was basically, Zimri was walking dead to begin with, and he's not really didn't have the same exact kind of tumor to begin with. But Goses enumetame, because a Goses, this person who's expected to be dead, does not give the same kind of tumor as a person who dies. Rabbi Shmuel Sharei Mishmini Hamaluim Hu Pinchas Meshuach Milchama V'Shchein Moda Simcha Zu Smicha Zu V'Sheva Smichot V'Haita Elisheva Eshet Aaron Yitera Al Ha'achrus Shayu Ben Bena Meshuach Milchama. So it's to this to the wife of Aaron that she had the merit, the zchut of having this of having so many kohanim come from her. Ushma misham naton lo l'chiyot Meshuach Milchama aval avoda u'zdorot lo kan nidna lo kahuna l'chol mile lizaro acharav brit kahunat olam. So in other words, he's a descendant of Elisheva, just like any other Kohen. And according to Dat Zakanim, it seems like he'd be a Kohen either way. And the reward of Brit Olam, that he has this Shalom, this Kahuna Brit Olam, is that his descendants, he and his descendants after him, would be involved in this kind of Kahuna forever, despite the fact that he killed somebody. So it's not like he's being given, as Rashi says, the kahuna. He's retaining the kahuna. He was always a Kohen. He comes from Elisheva, just like everybody else, like every other Kohen. And so he gets that zchut, he gets that merit anyway. So again, we have to keep these kind of straight. Rashi says that Pinchas's reward is that he becomes a Kohen. Dat Zakanim says, no, he didn't become a Kohen. He was always a Kohen. He was born a Kohen. He remains a Kohen, even though he was involved in killing. And not only that, but his reward is that he and his descendants forever would then become this Mashiach Milchama, the Kohen who was involved in war. Let's go on to a Meshech Chachma. We're going to see two Meshech Chachmas that give two different answers, and both of them fit very nicely with both Rashi's answer and the Dat Zakanim, or one or the other. First, let's look at the Meshech Chachma that deals with a question of why this was given to Moshe. Keep in mind that Pinchas was also a Navi, so Hashem could have told Pinchas that he's a Navi, that he's going to be a Kohen, or whatever it is that he's being rewarded with. Why does Hashem have to tell Moshe what Pinchas's reward is? So there's, like I said, a number of answers to that, but the Meshech Chachma's answer is the Hine Afapi Ma Shedarish Sifri, what it says in Sifri and in the Midrash in Sifri, Haita Zaru Achorav Brit Kunat Olam, B'Kanai Al Kahuna Gedola. It means that because of what he did, he and his descendants would have Kahuna Gedola. Every single Kohen Gadol for all of history has been a descendant not just of Aaron, but directly a descendant of Pinchas as well. Aaron and Eliezer, and then Pinchas. Im Kain, okay, come on, can the man the Amar Pasuk, then Grusha lo Noda. Milvad she'im avad lo chala. So if a Kohen marries a Grusha, a divorcee, which is not, he's not allowed to do, what happens to his son? His son is not a Kohen. His son is this category called a halal. And a halal is not allowed to do the service of the Beit HaMikdash. Ele af im haya Kohen gadol v'avad avodot k'shahaya Kohen gadol the lo kosher b'shar Kohen kamo avodat d'yom HaKippurim. And so it is possible that a Kohen would lose the opportunity to do the service of the Yom Kippur, of other things that a Kohen Gadol is supposed to do. It is possible for a Kohen to lose a Gam Kein Kasher. But in this case, he's being promised that he's going to stay kosher. Af al gav diktiv bara Berech Hashem chilo al halalim. By gam hach karol zaru acharav l'chakshiru l'friya l'kuhuna gedola. It's interesting to note that not every Kohen in history has been a good Kohen, but the promise to Pinchas then is that his descendants would always be able to retain the Kahuna Gedola, that they would not sin, they would not make these mistakes, and that they would always be that they would be a Kohanim forever. And that's this Brit Olam. That he's the Kahuna Brit Olam. He has a promise that his descendants would always be Kohanim. They would never mess up, not with a Ben Grusha, not Ben Chalutza, etc. Nidchu divrei abate Kahuna, Hova Hashem Yitbarach. No, sorry. So he's going to continue on this subject at another point. But then he says elsewhere, there's actually an earlier, the previous Meshech Chachma to the one I just read, Mir Simcha Medvinsk. So over there, he has another question. Why this whole parsha deals with so much lineage? Let me point out to you, let's go back to the verse real quick. It said, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. Just Pinchas ben Elazar HaKohen would have been enough. Why do we need, he's the son of Elazar, Aaron, etc., etc. So the Meshech Chachma there says another answer to our question of what it is that he received as his reward. To understand this, first of all, we need to look that the Gemara in Kedushin 66 tells us, Ben Grusha ben Chalutza, Vadato Kshera, that the somebody who's a Ben Grusha ben Chalutza, even though he's not supposed to do the service. So his reward, like we said before, whether is a little bit different. So before we said, remember the three answers we got of what his reward was. Rashi says he became a Kohen. The Datzakinim says he remained a Kohen. Meshech Chachma so far has told us that his descendants would be Kohanim and would not mess up. Here it says that his descendants would be Kohanim, ben Kasher, ben Pasul. Doesn't matter whether they're good or whether they sin. The descendants of Pinchas would remain in good standing. They get like a free ride, right? Hall pass. Ubepirush livnei Moshe nitrachu min hakahuna. But keep in mind that Moshe himself, his descendants did not become Kohanim. Why not? Says the Ibn Ezra mipnei shebanav hayu b'nei Yitro, because his descendants, at least on the mother's side, not on his side is kosher, but his mother's side, they come from Yitro. So they have this kind of, there's something already non-Jewish. They're not, somehow spiritually deficient in their ancestry. So they can. That's why Moshe's descendants are not Kohanim. But what about Pinchas? Okay, and Bnei Aaron Shayu Michasim Kuna. The descendants of Aaron, they're all ready for Kahuna. Bnei Shayu Bnei Bat Nachshon. They are from the daughter of Nachshon, right? Aaron's wife was a daughter of Nachshon, the prince of Yehuda. Pinchas haya ben bat Putiel, but Pinchas was a descendant of, as the people of the time would make fun, and we've mentioned this midrash in previous classes, that the people would say that his ancestor fattened calves for Avodah Zarah, right? Putiel is another name for Yitro. And therefore he did not become a Kohen until he killed Zimri. In other words, that standard that was put on Moshe and put on everybody else, that not only did you have to be kosher from your father's side, you also have to be completely kosher on your mother's side. That standard was accepted, was made as an exception for Pinchas. So this is a little bit more complicated answer to what his reward is. But his reward is, amongst other things, that whether he was made a Kohen or whether he was always a Kohen, his descendants would become Kohanim, even though from his mother's side, he was not 100% kosher. Just like Moshe's descendants. So the same standard that was put on Moshe was not placed on Pinchas, and that's the reward that he gets, and that's what makes this a reward of Brit Olam, of Kunat Brit Olam, that he Brit Kunat Olam, that he has the covenant of Kahuna forever, is that his descendants would become Kohanim, even though his from his ancestry there's something missing in terms of the complete Jewishness of his ancestry. All right, on these psukim as well, the Orach Chaim wants to point out something very interesting. I thought it was interesting anyway, and that is that he's rewarded. Why? Pinchas is rewarded because he took Hashem's anger from the Bnei Yisrael, me'al Bnei Yisrael. Strange. The anger was on them, and then it was taken from off of them. So, and this reward is because of that. What exactly was happening with this anger? So says the Orach Chaim, this is brilliant, and he goes on in more detail than what I have here. If you're curious to read more of his commentary, he mentions this a few times in the next few verses as well. He says, "Perush achar sheyetzasa hachama b'haita alehem ashiva me'alehem zeh shevach gadol." The amazing thing is that the anger was already on the Jewish people when Pinchas acted. Hashem was already in the process of punishing them. Oh, nitkaven lomar maaseh hatov begeder ha'pu'ula atzma v'asir kas Hashem ki hakas hu anaf yagon. So it's one thing when Hashem is angry, when Hashem is about to be angry, and you stop his anger, right? You keep Hashem from being angry. You mollify him. You pacify Hashem, quote unquote. That's amazing. That's good. But to prevent harm from happening once his anger has already been unleashed, once Hashem is really angry, once the ball is rolling, in the middle of the cavalcade, in the middle of in the middle of the snowfall, to stop the snow. This, once physics has already got the ball rolling down the hill, and stop it. That's amazing. That's beyond. That's why he gets such an amazing reward. By the way, like I said, later on he writes that Pinchas earned this through three things. What's so amazing about this reward? Why does he get such a reward? How did he stop Hashem's anger in the middle of Hashem's being angry, in the midst of the anger? So the answer is he earned it through three things. First of all, personal sacrifice. He risked his life trying to kill Zimri because he was walking into a tent of the prince of Shimon, surrounded by the tribe of Shimon. Any one of them could have killed him, and he knew that. And he was motivated by pure motivation. He had no animosity towards Zimri at all. He didn't hate him. He loved him. He wanted him to change, etc., etc. He didn't want to do what he wanted, this act. He was only acting on behalf of Hashem. He didn't usually walk around with a spear, as many people point out. Now he had to pick up the spear. It wasn't like he was holding it to begin with, right? And also the fact that this was done in public. He made a Kiddush Hashem in public, huge public. Everybody saw Hundreds of people witnessed this act that he did, and that is also one of the 3 things that gives him such a great reward. Okay, that's the Orach Chaim. We're going to skip now several chapters. We're going to skip the counting. We've talked about the counting and some of the unique changes in language and such. We've spoken about that in previous years. You could look at the YouTube playlist for that in your free time, or even when you don't have free time. All right, we're going to skip to the Yehoshua and how he was given his responsibilities. First of all, in these psukim, there's a good number of hints to what exactly are the responsibilities of a Jewish leader, of what Moshe thought of the responsibilities of the Jewish leader. What would Moshe know about that? Well, he was the greatest leader of all time, so he should know what a responsible leader should be able to do. And so should we. V'yidaber Hashem el Moshe, V'yidaber Moshe el Hashem leimor. Very unique pasuk. Very unique pasuk. The only time in the entire Torah where it says that Moshe spoke to Hashem in this kind of strong way that usually Hashem reserves for speaking to Moshe. This is the only place in the entire Torah. This is a good trivia question, by the way. So if anybody ever asks a trivia question like what's the most unique verse in this parsha, it would be this one: V'daber Moshe el Hashem leimor, Yivkod Hashem Elokei Haruchot. This is also very unique. Hashem is called Elokei Haruchot, the God of the winds. He's called twice in the Torah, in the very beginning and here. L'chol basar ish al ha'ida. Hashem is master of all people, so he wants there to be a person for the congregation, Asher Yetzi Lifneihem, that goes in front of them, Asher Yavo Lifneihem, who brings them out in front of them, Asher Yotziem, Asher Yiviem, V'lo Tiyeh Adat Hashem Katzon Asher Ein Lahem Ro'eh. The congregation of Hashem should not be like a flock that doesn't have a shepherd. In other words, the leader should be a shepherd. And of course, he didn't say who the leader should be. Chazal tell us that Moshe wanted his sons to be the leaders, one of them, right? But for a number of reasons, one of which we mentioned before, from the Meshech Chochmah, there are a number of reasons Moshe's children were not seen as fit to lead the Jewish people after him. Moshe, kach lecha et Yehoshua bin Nun, take Yehoshua bin Nun, asher ish asher ruach bo, person who has that spirit in him. That spirit you just described is how most people understand that. V'samachta et yadcha alav, and lean your hands on him. So, in several places, Rav Velvel Soloveitchik, the Hagriz we call him, points out that these verses show what he wanted Yehoshua to be able to do. And he focuses our attention to the Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 8a, where using some of the last verses in the Torah, it says, Ki ata tavo ktiv, ki ata tavi ktiv. So it says, in different contexts, it says, regarding Moshe's later command to Yehoshua regarding leading the Jewish people, it says, for you shall go with the people into the land, and then it says later on, you shall bring the people into the land. So which is it? Bring or go with? So which way is it? So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar lo Moshe Yehoshua, Atav hazakanim lividor imahan. So you should be with the zakanim, with the elders of your generation. Amallah Kadosh Baruch Hu Tul Makal. You should have a stick. Al Hakad Kodam. Daber Echad Ladur Ein Shnei Dvarim Ladur. There should be one word. You should have a stick to quote unquote hit them on the head. So because it should only be one word in each generation, one leader, and not multiple leaders in a generation. Velvo Soloveitchik points out that you can't do that, right? As the leader of a court, for instance, right? There should be a Sanhedrin, there should be a head of a Sanhedrin, but he should not be going out on a limb. If there's a majority vote about a particular case, he needs to go with the majority. So it's not true. You're not hitting them on the head. You can't have multiple opinions. You should have multiple opinions. You must. You can't have your own opinion, in fact. You should hit yourself on the head. So what's going on here? So amongst, like I said, he says this in multiple places, the same type of theme, but amongst the places where he says this is where it tells Moshe to lean his hands on Yehoshua. So let's get to Nira. It says basically after an analysis, it seems, there's really three things that the Jewish leader is the leader for. Aleph is smicha. One is seen from the fact that there was smicha, that there was leaning of the hands. The fact that he leaned his hands on him. Right. This is one of the things that the Jewish leader is responsible for, and that is to be who else gets smicha? The rabbi, right? The Sanhedrin, the halachic leader of the generation. So that's one thing that Yehoshua had to do, was be that person, had to be that leader of the halachic aspect of things, the Nasi, right? The Rosh Yeshiva, right? But Mashiach shenimshach Yehoshua al yedei Moshe b'shemen hamishcha, and the pouring of the oil, that's not something that rabbis get. Who gets oil poured on them? The leader, the king. And that Yehoshua hayadino k'melech mivor b'tzivur Allah. So the Yehoshua had to become the leader of the political leader, and that's this shemen, that's the oil that's being poured on him. And then he says, and part of that is, for example, something that he points out from Chazal. Actually, he quotes it directly from the Rambam in the 3rd chapter in the Laws of Kings, and that is that the king has the right, has actually the responsibility to kill somebody who is contradicting him. That fits with that Gemara in Sanhedrin, that he should carry a stick, hit somebody on the head. That's not a court. In a court, you don't do that. But when it comes to a king leadership, there you have to do that. When it comes to a leader making a decision, we're going forward. And somebody says, no, we should go actually to the side. We should go left. You contradicted the king. That's bad news. All right. But there's a third responsibility of Yehoshua, and this is the one that, like I said, Rav Belville Soloveitchik points out in a few places. B'Mesorah, right? As the first Mishnah in Pirkei Avot tells us that Moshe Kibel Torah B'Sina Masruha Yehoshua. So even though there are a lot of other people who learn from him, the Afal Pi Shekatav Rambam, Eliezer, Yehoshua, Pinchas, Lamdu Moshe. Even though there's a lot of people learn from Moshe, Elazar, Yehoshua, Pinchas, right? Mikol Makom Yehoshua Hu Shekibel Mesorah Moshe Kedei She'al Yedo Timshach Shulato HaMesorah. Yehoshua learned Torah in such a way, with such a purpose, that the Torah of Moshe should come through him. He knew that. He took on that responsibility of learning, not just learning to know what to do, not just learning to know what to teach, but learning to preserve the Mesorah. That's another responsibility of that leader, of Yehoshua, Kamo Shemona Hatana B'Avot, right? Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai Masrua Yehoshua. That Masrua, that giving over. That's really a class on Pirkei Avot. We spoke about this a few weeks ago, right? So this giving over is something that's you give everything over. It's 100%. All that you've received, you give over as much as you can. How good of a kli that generation was to be makabel, to accept whatever it is that Yehoshua taught them. That's on them. That's not on him. But he should do the best he can to sort of be a vehicle, really, to be the what's the word I'm looking for? To be the conduit, really. That's the word. Right? He's the conduit for Moshe's Torah. He accepts it all. He downloads everything from Moshe, then he uploads it to everybody else. That is another responsibility of Yehoshua that's mentioned in the Torah, and it's a very clear, very important responsibility. All right, how much time do we have for this? We'll see. We'll do our best. Just one final point. I think we have time for this. Yeah, I just wanted to. We should like almost half of the parsha is the karbonot. Everything else, maybe not in terms of the numbers. The counting of the people is probably much more psukim in terms of verses. But in terms of like the focus of the parsha, that it's a chapter of the parsha, is the fact that the Jewish people are commanded the different karbonot, the different sacrifices that they have to bring, including, of course, the holidays. I thought it's worthwhile to at least say something about that. And this insight from the Sforno is very, very important. Rashi Hadshechem, and on Hadshechem, that's actually going to be a very important part of the comment. On your new months, by the way, Rosh Chodesh Av is going to be in a few weeks, right? Menachem Av, God willing for good, right? Takrivu Ola Hashem. You're going to bring an Ola, burnt offering to Hashem. Parim b'nei vakar shnayim, 2 bulls of right, 2 bulls, ayel echad, 1 lamb, kvasim b'nei shana, 1 ram, 7 shiva tmimim, 2 and 7 pure lambs. So Sforno wants to know why it says Rashi Hadshechem, your new months. It's not your new months, it's the new months. Should have said Rashi Chadashim, and the new months. Why your new months? Like it belongs to somebody. In a Yom Rosh Chodesh Haya Minhag L'Yisrael Haya Yom Kodesh B'tzad Ma Kamo Sha'id Amru Asher Nistaret Shem B'Yom Hamasa. So the holiday of Rosh Chodesh was actually celebrated by the Jews long before the Torah. It's an ancient holiday. They would celebrate the new month. Right? And V'zeh yura shelo haya yom rosh chodesh etzlam yom masa lechein yichas oto l'Yisrael b'amru rashi Hadshechem. That's why it says on your new months, because it already sort of belongs to the Jewish people. They were already celebrating it. Lochen katav b'moadim. It doesn't say that by the other holidays. Shelo katav b'Shabbat. Shabbatechem doesn't say your Sabbaths. They weren't keeping the Shabbat the same way. V'lo b'yom habikurechem, v'lo b'yom sochatechem. The tam min hagim zeh haya amnam Matzalach Yisrael b'olam hazeh haya b'tzad ma doma le'inyan hariach asher ein la ba'atzma or klal zulato v'zeh lekabel zulato. Okay, so what he's saying is that because the Jewish people were already celebrating this day, they weren't working on it, or however they were celebrating it, it remained special to them as the beginning of the new months. Even though other days might have been special too, Shabbat is special, no question, but it wasn't celebrated the same way as Rosh Chodesh was celebrated in these ancient times. Why was it celebrated? So he goes on to say that the Jewish people, they knew, as most people do, and especially nowadays, that the moon and its cycles has something to do with not only agriculture and the waves, etc., but also they knew that the light of the moon was a reflection of the light of the sun. And so that's something to celebrate, this amazing ability of the moon to grab the light of the sun and to shine it down onto something else, gives us hope that we can do the same thing too. Right? We've got something amazingly powerful that we might not be in touch with all the time. Right? At nighttime, you don't see the sun, but nevertheless, the heat, the gravity, everything else that we get from the we don't get gravity from the sun, but the fact that the sun holds the planets in place, right? The gravity of the sun. All of that is significant. It all affects us, and the fact that the Jewish people sinned, he goes on to say that the Jewish people sinned with the golden calf, and they didn't have the same kind of the laws of nature didn't affect them as well as in the positive ways as it should have, as it could have, as it did before. They sort of lost the light, as it were. So the Jewish people sort of lost a little bit of their Rosh Chodesh. And that's what and the phrase in the Gemara in Shabbat 126, where it says Ein Mazel Yisrael, the Jewish people do not have Mazel. What that means is that we do not make light of our own anymore. We're not masters of our own fate as we used to be. So in the sense that we were celebrating that in the past, now H-Shem is saying, let me take Rosh Chodesh. I will continue to give you that light. I will continue to give you your greatness. But it's not going to be an independent greatness that you make out of your own, as you did when you were celebrating the moon on your own. It's a greatness that is completely yours through me. I'm taking it. You celebrate me. You celebrate Rosh Chodesh the way you should, the way I ask you to. And now Rosh Chodesh will give you light from me. Hashem is kind of giving us a gift. So it was your month. It was your thing to do. But I'm taking that energy, that strength, that holiness, whatever you want to call it, that spirituality, and we're now adapting that to your service of me. It's an important thing, important idea. Because think about it, there are a lot of spiritualities out there. There's a lot of things, whether they're kosher or not. It's not the best time to have a discussion about yoga or whatever. But there are a lot of different kinds of spiritual things that go on in the world, and alternative medicine and all these kinds of questions. The first question to ask, the first question that an observant Jew should ask, isn't does it work? The first question should be, does Hashem approve of it? They should go, and that's part of this whole Mesorah that Yehoshua brought down, is that we have somebody to go to. This smicha the actual literal smicha was discontinued years ago, but you go to the leaders of the Jewish people today who've been makabel, who've absorbed that Torah that Moshe got from Sinai and gave it to Yehoshua, and Yehoshua continued it on and on and on till today, till at least today, and God willing to the future as well. And that Torah continues. And so we have somebody to ask, is this a kosher thing? Is this our Rosh Chodesh, or is this your Rosh Chodesh, Hashem? That's what we need to do in order to create that kind of synergy and that kind of spirituality that Hashem wants us to have in this world moving forward. Again, I want to thank you for listening. I'll stop the live feed to Facebook, see if there's any questions, and everybody should have a great rest of your week and a Shabbat Shalom.